So now every black woman with a notebook thinks she can play detective? Captain Grant Holloway sneered as he ripped the papers from Danielle Carter's hands and scattered them across the booking room floor. Before she could retrieve them, he grabbed her wrist, twisted it behind her back, and snapped on the handcuffs. Officer Kyle Mercer laughed. Maybe she thinks somebody important is coming to save her. Holloway shoved Danielle toward the holding cell. Women like you always walk in demanding respect, he mocked. Tonight, you'll learn respect is something I decide who gets. Mercer kicked Danielle's notebook beneath a desk. Look at her, Captain. Still acting important. Give her an hour behind bars and she'll remember exactly where she belongs. Danielle slowly turned toward them. The 38-year-old black woman showed no fear. Holloway pushed her inside and slammed the steel door. You're not an investigator here, you're a suspect. Danielle stepped toward the bars. Captain, you should be very careful about what you do next. Then headlights flooded the windows. 5 dark SUVs stopped outside. A team in plain clothes entered. Their leader displayed his credentials. Where is Agent Carter? Holloway's smile disappeared. Danielle quietly stood. Because the woman he had humiliated wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was the reason they had come. Stay with this story to see what happens when the truth finally walks through that door. Comment your city and local time below, and subscribe if you believe dignity and justice should belong to everyone. 6 hours earlier, rain had begun falling over Belhaven, Missouri, turning the streets around Central Precinct into mirrors of red traffic lights and pale storefront signs. Danielle Carter sat alone inside a gray sedan across from a 24-hour laundromat on Mercer Avenue. To anyone passing, she looked like a tired professional waiting for someone. She wore dark jeans, a cream blouse beneath a plain navy jacket, and low black boots. No badge showed. No weapon showed. Nothing about the 38-year-old black woman suggested that she had spent the last 11 months studying patterns most people never noticed. Danielle noticed everything. At 7:43 p.m., a blue sedan rolled through the intersection. At 7:44, a patrol cruiser followed. Danielle straightened. The cruiser's lights flashed. The blue sedan pulled beside the curb. A middle-aged black man stepped out only after an officer ordered him to. Danielle recognized him from a photograph buried in an old case file. Marcus Bell. For 3 weeks, her team had been trying to locate him. Danielle reached for the small notebook beside her and wrote the time. Officer Kyle Mercer approached Marcus while another officer remained near the cruiser. Even through the rain, Danielle could see Marcus keeping both hands visible. Mercer searched him. Nothing. He searched the driver's seat. Nothing. Then Mercer walked back toward the cruiser. Danielle narrowed her eyes. For several seconds, Mercer's body blocked her view of his right hand. When he returned to Marcus's car, his movements had changed. He crouched beside the rear tire, reached beneath the edge of the vehicle, then immediately called the second officer over. Danielle wrote another time, 7:49 p.m. Mercer stood holding a small plastic packet. Marcus stared at it. That isn't mine. Mercer said something Danielle could not hear. Marcus shook his head harder. I've never seen that before. Danielle's jaw tightened. She had seen enough suspicious searches during the Belhaven investigation to recognize the pattern. But recognition was not evidence. She needed details, times, names, movements, every fact that could survive a courtroom. She quietly raised her phone and photographed the cruiser's license plate. That was when Mercer looked across the street. Their eyes met. Danielle lowered the phone. Mercer said something to his partner and started toward her. Danielle stayed where she was. He crossed through the rain and stopped beside her driver's window. Roll it down. Danielle lowered it halfway. You taking pictures of us? I'm standing on a public street. That wasn't my question. Danielle met his stare. Then ask a lawful one. Mercer's expression hardened. He reached toward the door handle, but another vehicle arrived before he touched it. An unmarked police SUV. Captain Grant Holloway stepped out. Danielle recognized him immediately. His photograph occupied the center of a board in a secure room 20 miles away. Holloway approached slowly, rain gathering across the shoulders of his uniform. What's the problem? Mercer pointed at Danielle. She's recording the stop. Holloway looked through the window. His eyes moved from Danielle's face to her notebook, then to her phone. Give me the phone. Danielle remained calm. On what legal basis? Holloway blinked. People usually responded to his uniform before they responded to his words. Danielle could see the irritation arrive almost instantly. I'm conducting an investigation. So am I allowed to leave? I didn't say that. Then am I being detained? Mercer laughed behind him. Holloway leaned closer. You always answer questions with questions? When the questions matter. His mouth tightened. Step out of the vehicle. Danielle considered refusing. Instead, she opened the door, not because Holloway had established lawful grounds, because she needed to see what he would do when he believed nobody important was watching. Danielle stepped into the rain. Holloway held out his hand. Phone. No. Mercer moved closer. Holloway stared at her. You're making this difficult. I'm asking you to follow procedure. Procedure? Mercer scoffed. You carrying that little notebook around pretending your internal affairs? He reached toward it. Danielle moved it away. Don't touch my property. Mercer smiled. There it is. What? That attitude. Danielle felt anger rise, but years of training kept it from reaching her face. Across the street, Marcus had been placed against his car. He was watching. So was the second officer. Danielle understood the real test now. Holloway was no longer interested in discovering what she had done. He was deciding whether she would submit. Holloway extended his hand again. Last chance. Give me the phone. Danielle shook her head. No warrant. No consent. For a moment, only rain filled the silence. Then Holloway stepped behind her, hands behind your back. Mercer's grin widened. Danielle did not move. Holloway repeated himself. Hands behind your back. She slowly complied. Cold metal closed around one wrist. Then the other. The click sounded strangely small compared with the decision behind it. Danielle looked toward Marcus. His expression carried something she knew well, helpless recognition. He had seen this before. Holloway leaned near Danielle's ear. Maybe downtown you'll remember how cooperation works. Danielle turned her head slightly. Captain, what exactly am I being arrested for? I didn't say arrested. You put me in cuffs. For officer safety. Then document that. Something flickered across Holloway's face. Mercer took Danielle's notebook. He flipped through pages filled with times, vehicle descriptions, and initials. What is this supposed to be? Danielle said nothing. Mercer tossed it onto the hood of the SUV. Holloway studied her again. For the first time, uncertainty entered his eyes. But pride defeated caution. Take her in. Mercer opened the rear door of the cruiser. Danielle looked once more toward the street cameras, the patrol vehicles, and Marcus Bell. Every detail mattered now. Then she lowered herself into the back seat. Mercer slammed the door. As the cruiser pulled away, Danielle looked down at the handcuffs around her wrists. Holloway thought he had removed a problem from his street. He had no idea he had just placed the investigator hunting him inside his own station. And Danielle intended to find out exactly how far he would go before he realized it. The cruiser entered the underground garage of Central Precinct at 8:17 p.m. Danielle Carter had spent the entire ride saying nothing. Officer Kyle Mercer opened the rear door. Welcome downtown, detective. Danielle stepped out carefully, her wrists still cuffed behind her. Captain Grant Holloway arrived moments later and led them through a secured entrance. Officers at the booking desk looked up as Danielle entered. Some stared. One officer whispered something to another. Danielle ignored them. She was studying the building. Camera above the elevator, second camera facing booking, electronic access panel beside evidence intake, 2 interview rooms, a hallway leading toward detention. Every detail became part of a mental map. Holloway stopped at the booking counter. Empty your pockets. My belongings were already searched. Do it again. Danielle looked at her cuffed hands. Mercer chuckled. Guess she needs help. He removed the cuffs, then immediately reached into Danielle's jacket. She stepped backward. Don't. Mercer smiled. Still giving orders? I'm telling you not to conduct an unlawful search. Holloway leaned against the counter. You're inside my station now. Danielle looked at him. The law didn't stop at the door. The room became quiet. Mercer's smile disappeared. Holloway pointed toward her phone. Unlock it. No. We have reason to believe you recorded an active investigation. Recording police activity from a public location isn't probable cause to search my phone. Mercer looked at Holloway. Holloway's jaw tightened. Who are you? Danielle Carter. I know your name. I asked who you are. Danielle said nothing. Holloway stepped closer. You happen to be sitting across the street from an arrest. You photographed my officers. You wrote down vehicle information. And now you're quoting procedure. He paused. That makes me curious. You should be curious about what happened beside Marcus Bell's car. The effect was immediate. Mercer looked away. Holloway's eyes sharpened. Danielle noticed both reactions. You know Bell? Holloway asked. I know what I saw. And what exactly did you see? Danielle looked toward Mercer. A search that produced nothing. Mercer stiffened. Then an officer returned to his cruiser. She paused deliberately, and suddenly the second search produced something. Mercer stepped forward. You calling me dirty? I'm describing what happened. You don't know what you saw. Then the video should settle it. Silence. Danielle had deliberately mentioned video without saying whether she possessed any. Holloway glanced toward her confiscated phone. That was enough. Put her in interview 2. Mercer grabbed Danielle's arm. Woke. Officer Emily Reyes was standing near the hallway. She was younger than Holloway and Mercer, perhaps early 30s. Her eyes moved from Danielle's restrained wrists to the booking paperwork. Captain? Holloway stopped. What? Reyes held up the form. This says investigative detention. Correct. But Mercer entered obstruction in the system. Danielle turned slightly. Holloway did not. Then use obstruction. Reyes hesitated. What was the obstructive act? Holloway finally looked at her. Are you questioning the arrest? I'm asking what I should document. Document what I told you. Reyes lowered the form. Yes, Captain. Danielle saw discomfort in her expression. That mattered. Inside interview 2, Mercer placed Danielle's belongings on the table. Phone. Keys. Wallet. Notebook. He picked up the notebook. Let's see what our detective has been writing. Danielle watched him flip through it. The notes were deliberately abbreviated. Dates. Initials. Vehicle numbers. Times. Nothing identifying the federal investigation. Mercer frowned. What does MB 1949 mean? You tell me. He tossed the notebook down. Then he opened Danielle's wallet. For one dangerous second, Danielle watched his fingers move toward a concealed interior compartment. Her federal credentials were inside. If Mercer found them now, the operation changed instantly. Danielle leaned forward. If you continue searching without documenting what you remove, your evidence log becomes unreliable. Mercer stopped. His attention shifted from the compartment to her face. You really love hearing yourself talk. I love accurate records. Mercer slammed the wallet shut. The credentials remained hidden. Minutes later, Holloway entered. He placed both hands on the table. Let's try again. Danielle leaned back. Why were you watching Marcus Bell? I was watching your officer. Why? Because his behavior interested me. Holloway smiled coldly. You expect me to believe you randomly decided to investigate a police officer? I never said random. The smile vanished. Holloway stared at her for several seconds. Then he stood. Booker. Reyes appeared in the doorway. En obstruction? Holloway looked directly at her. Obstruction and interference pending review. Danielle spoke quietly. You changed a detention into an arrest without discovering any new evidence. Holloway turned. You should have handed over the phone. That isn't evidence of a crime. It is tonight. For the first time, Danielle felt the full weight of what she was witnessing. This was no misunderstanding. Holloway believed procedure was something he could rewrite when necessary, and he was doing it inside a building filled with witnesses. Mercer cuffed Danielle again and led her toward detention. The steel doors opened electronically. They passed one occupied cell, then another. Danielle barely looked inside until a familiar voice stopped her. You. She turned. Marcus Bell stood behind the bars of the next cell. His shirt was still wet from the rain. His eyes widened. You were across the street. Mercer shoved Danielle forward. Keep moving. But Danielle had already understood the significance. The man her team had spent 3 weeks trying to locate was now being held only a few feet away from her. Marcus gripped the bars. They did it to you too? Danielle looked at him. Before she could answer, Mercer pushed open the neighboring cell. Inside, Danielle stepped through. The door slammed behind her. For the first time that night, she allowed herself the smallest breath. Holloway believed he had isolated 2 problems. Instead, without realizing it, he had placed a federal investigator directly beside the witness who could help bring his entire operation down. For nearly a minute after Mercer disappeared through the security door, neither Danielle nor Marcus spoke. Rain tapped faintly against the narrow, reinforced window at the far end of the detention corridor. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere beyond the steel doors, a telephone rang twice before falling silent. Marcus Bell remained near the bars of his cell. You were watching them, he finally said. Danielle sat on the narrow bench opposite him. I was watching everything. Marcus gave a bitter laugh. That's what got you locked up. Danielle studied him carefully. Marcus looked exhausted rather than dangerous. His wet shirt clung to his shoulders, and frustration filled his eyes. What did Officer Mercer find beneath your car? Nothing that belonged to me. I know. Marcus stared at her. How? I saw the first search. His expression changed. Danielle continued quietly. He checked the driver's seat, the console, underneath the seats. Then he walked back toward his cruiser. When he returned, he searched again. Marcus stepped closer to the bars. You saw that? Yes. Then tell them. I did. And? Danielle looked around the cell. Marcus understood. His shoulders dropped. Right. He turned away. That's Bellhaven. Danielle allowed the silence to remain. She needed Marcus to trust her, but revealing her federal identity inside a monitored detention area could compromise months of work. Why were they interested in you? She asked. Marcus looked back suspiciously. Who are you? Danielle Carter. That doesn't answer my question. No. Marcus studied her. You're not a reporter. Danielle remained silent. You're not a lawyer either. What makes you think that? Lawyers tell everybody they're lawyers. Despite herself, Danielle almost smiled. Marcus did not. Whatever you are, I'm done talking. He moved toward the bench. Danielle lowered her voice. Marcus, somebody has been trying to find you for weeks. He froze. Fear replaced suspicion. Who? I can't tell you. Then we're finished. I understand. No, you don't. Marcus returned to the bars. 3 months ago, I watched something I wasn't supposed to see. Danielle said nothing. Marcus looked toward the security door before continuing. A young man got stopped outside a convenience store. Mercer searched his car and found nothing. I was parked across the street. Danielle listened. Mercer went to his cruiser. Another officer met him there. They talked. Then Mercer returned to the car. Marcus swallowed. When he came back out, he was holding a bag. The pattern matched tonight almost perfectly. What happened afterward? The kid got arrested. Did you report what you saw? I tried. To whom? Marcus laughed without humor. Captain Holloway. Danielle felt cold despite the warm cell. What did he say? He told me I was confused. Said darkness and distance can make people imagine things. Marcus gripped the bars. 2 days later, Mercer came to my workplace. Danielle's eyes narrowed. He threatened you? He didn't have to say the words. Marcus looked down. He knew where I worked. Knew where my mother lived. Told me good citizens know when to stop asking questions. That was more than misconduct. It was intimidation. Did you keep anything from that night? Marcus hesitated. That hesitation told Danielle the answer. Before she could ask more, the security door opened. Officer Emily Reyes entered with a clipboard. Bell, interview room. Marcus immediately stepped backward. I already answered questions. Reyes looked uncomfortable. Captain wants to speak with you. I want a lawyer. I'll document that. Marcus glanced toward Danielle. Danielle gave him the smallest nod. Ask for counsel. Say nothing else. Reyes opened Marcus's cell. As he passed Danielle, he whispered, There's a copy. Danielle kept her expression neutral. A copy of what? But Mercer appeared behind Reyes. Move. Marcus was taken away. Mercer looked at Danielle. You two making friends? Danielle said nothing. Enjoy the accommodations. The door closed again. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Danielle replayed Marcus's words. There's a copy. If he had preserved evidence from the earlier incident, Holloway had a reason to fear him. Voices suddenly rose beyond the security door. Reyes, I'm saying the interview needs to be recorded. Then Holloway, I told you the system is down. The interview room camera isn't down. It is now. A pause. Captain, why are we shutting cameras off? Holloway's voice became colder. You've been here, what, 3 years? 4. Then after 4 years, you should understand how loyalty works. Danielle stood. Reyes answered quietly. My report still has to be accurate. Your report will say what happened. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Silence followed. Then Holloway spoke. Be careful, Officer Reyes. People who make everything difficult tend to have difficult careers. Footsteps approached. Reyes entered alone. Her face was tense. She stopped near Danielle's cell. For 1 second, neither woman spoke. Then Danielle noticed a tiny red light near Reyes's chest. Her body camera was still recording. Reyes saw Danielle notice it. Neither acknowledged the fact. You need anything? Reyes asked. My attorney. I'll document the request. Thank you. Reyes turned. Officer. She stopped. Danielle chose her words carefully. Accurate records matter. Reyes looked back. Yes, ma'am. Then she left. Danielle sat again. For the first time since entering Central Precinct, she felt something approaching hope. Not because Reyes knew who she was. She clearly did not. That made her decision more important. Reyes was protecting procedure for someone she believed had no influence at all. 10 minutes later, the door opened violently. Holloway entered, carrying several papers. Marcus was nowhere behind him. He stopped outside Danielle's cell. The anger from earlier had disappeared. Now he looked almost pleased. I think we've wasted enough time. Danielle stood. Where's Marcus? You should worry about yourself. Holloway held up the papers. I found a very simple way to make this whole problem disappear. Danielle approached the bars. What problem? You. He slid the papers through the opening. Danielle looked down. It was a prepared statement. Her name was already typed at the top. So was an account of events she had never given. According to the document, Danielle had approached an active police operation, ignored repeated lawful orders, interfered with officers, and attempted to conceal evidence on her phone. At the bottom waited an empty signature line. Danielle slowly raised her eyes. "You wrote my statement for me. I simplified things. You fabricated it." Holloway stepped closer. "Sign it and maybe you walk out tonight." Danielle looked at the signature line again. "And if I don't?" Holloway smiled. "Then by morning, Danielle Carter won't be the woman who witnessed something on Mercer Avenue." He tapped the paper through the bars. "She'll be the suspect who got arrested there." Danielle stared at him. Holloway believed he had finally cornered her. What he did not understand was that the document in Danielle's hands might become the clearest evidence against him yet. Danielle Carter read the fabricated statement twice, not because she needed clarification, because every sentence mattered. Captain Grant Holloway had transformed a questionable detention into a written lie, complete with times, accusations, and supposed warnings that had never happened. Danielle pushed the paper back through the bars. "No." Holloway stared at her. "You didn't even think about it." "I don't need to think about signing something false." His jaw tightened. "Then enjoy the cell." Danielle looked at him calmly. "You changed my detention to obstruction. Now you've created a statement claiming I concealed evidence. Which version happened first?" Holloway's expression shifted. "Only slightly, but Danielle saw it. That's not your concern. It becomes my concern when you ask me to sign it." Holloway unlocked the cell. "Bring her back to interview 2. Mercer appeared moments later. He grabbed Danielle's arm and led her down the corridor. Officer Emily Reyes stood near the booking desk. Her body camera remained attached to her uniform. The tiny indicator was still glowing. Danielle said nothing. Inside interview 2, Holloway placed the statement in front of her again. "Here's what happens next," he said. "You sign, acknowledge that you interfered with Mercer's arrest, and you walk out." "And Marcus Bell?" Holloway paused. Danielle noticed. "What about him?" "You're asking me?" "You seem unusually interested in Bell." "I watched your officer arrest him." "That's all?" Danielle leaned back. "You tell me." Mercer slammed his palm against the table. "Stop playing games." Danielle looked at him. "Did your first search of Marcus Bell's vehicle produce anything?" Mercer's face hardened. "I found narcotics." "That wasn't my question." Holloway stepped between them. "Enough." Danielle turned toward him. "What time was the evidence recovered?" "Approximately 7:45. Danielle knew the answer before he finished speaking. She had written the actual sequence in her notebook. The first search had still been underway then. "Interesting." Holloway frowned. "What?" "Nothing." "Say it." Danielle leaned forward. "You just described the evidence as recovered before Officer Mercer returned to his cruiser." Mercer glanced at Holloway. Danielle continued. "But that isn't the only problem." Holloway's eyes narrowed. "What problem?" "You mentioned Marcus Bell's previous complaint." "Silence." Mercer slowly turned toward his captain. Danielle had never told Holloway that Marcus had previously filed one. Yet Holloway had referenced it during the interrogation minutes earlier while accusing Danielle of coordinating with him. Danielle spoke softly. "I never told you Marcus had complained about Officer Mercer." Holloway's face became rigid. "So how did you know?" Nobody answered. That silence told Danielle more than words could have. Holloway stood. "This interview is over." Danielle remained seated. "You should preserve every recording from tonight." He stopped at the door. "Is that a threat?" "No." Danielle looked directly at him. "It's advice." Holloway left. Mercer followed him into the hallway. Their voices were low, but the door had not completely closed. "She knows too much," Mercer whispered. "She knows nothing. She knew about the search. Then we control what gets documented." Danielle stared toward the door. There it was. Not suspicion. Not inference. Intent. Outside, Reyes approached Holloway with a tablet. "Captain, the hallway camera is still recording." Holloway turned sharply. "I told you to shut the detention cameras down. I disabled the interview feed like you ordered. The hallway system is separate." "Then shut that down too." Reyes hesitated. "Why?" Mercer stared at her. Holloway stepped closer. "Because I gave you an order. That footage is part of a detention record." "Not anymore." Reyes looked toward interview 2, then back at Holloway. "Captain, turn it off." Danielle heard footsteps retreat. Seconds later, the small monitor above the interview room door went dark. Holloway returned. This time, he carried Danielle's wallet. He dropped it onto the table. "Let's figure out who you actually are." Danielle said nothing. Holloway removed her driver's license and entered the information into the precinct computer. Name, date of birth, address. He pressed enter. The system loaded, then stopped. Holloway frowned. Instead of the ordinary records page, a message appeared. Restricted record. Additional authorization required. Mercer leaned toward the screen. What does that mean? Holloway refreshed it. Same result. He tried another database. Danielle watched the confidence slowly leave his face. The second search produced even less information. No employment history. No routine profile. Only another restriction notice. Mercer lowered his voice. Captain, maybe we should cut her loose. Holloway looked at Danielle. For the first time that night, she saw genuine uncertainty. Who are you? Danielle held his gaze. You already asked me that. And you didn't answer? I gave you my name. Holloway walked around the table. Federal contractor? No response. Prosecutor? Danielle remained silent. Mercer shifted uneasily. What if she's internal? Holloway snapped toward him. Internal affairs wouldn't have restricted federal records. The words escaped before he could stop them. Danielle noticed. So did Mercer. Holloway looked back at the computer. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Danielle spoke quietly. You can still stop. Holloway turned. Stop what? Whatever decision you're about to make because you're afraid of what that screen means. His pride returned instantly. You think some database error scares me? Danielle shook her head. I think what you've already done should. Holloway grabbed the fabricated statement. He tore it from the table. Put her back in the cell. Mercer hesitated. Captain... Now. As Mercer reached for Danielle, Holloway stared once more at the restriction notice. He had finally realized the woman he had arrested might not be ordinary. But instead of correcting his mistake, he was about to make a far more dangerous choice. He was going to try to bury it. The restricted record warning remained on the computer screen after Danielle Carter was returned to her cell. Captain Grant Holloway stared at it. Officer Kyle Mercer stood behind him. We should let her go. Holloway turned slowly. And explain what? We say there wasn't enough to charge her. After bringing her here? After booking her? Mercer lowered his voice. Whatever she isn't some random woman with a notebook. Holloway knew that now, but releasing Danielle created a problem he feared more than keeping her. If she walked out, she could immediately report everything that had happened. If she stayed, Holloway still controlled the paperwork. At least that was what he told himself. Change the timeline, Holloway said. Mercer stared at him. What? Your report says the evidence was recovered at 7:49. Make it 7:44. That's before. I know what time it is. Mercer hesitated. Then he nodded. From her cell, Danielle could not hear the conversation, but she did not need to. She had watched Holloway's expression after the database search. Fear had entered the equation, and frightened people made mistakes. Across the corridor, Marcus Bell was returned to his cell. His face looked drained. Danielle stood. You okay? Marcus sat heavily on the bench. They wanted me to say I never saw Mercer near that other car 3 months ago. Did you? No. Danielle moved closer to the bars. You said there was a copy. Marcus looked toward the corridor camera. It was dark. They turned that off. That doesn't mean nobody is listening. Marcus nodded. Then he lowered his voice. I recorded part of what happened that night. Danielle remained still. On your phone? Originally. Originally? I knew they might take it. Marcus looked at her, so I copied the video. Where? Before Marcus could answer, footsteps approached. Officer Emily Reyes entered, carrying a bottle of water. Bell. Marcus stopped talking. Reyes passed the bottle through the opening. Then she glanced toward Danielle. The hallway cameras are offline. Danielle answered carefully. Are all of them? Reyes frowned. I was told they were. Danielle nodded toward a small black dome near the ceiling at the far end of the corridor. That one doesn't look like the others. Reyes followed her gaze. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she left. 10 minutes later, Reyes entered a small equipment room near the rear stairwell and examined the precinct's camera control panel. Danielle had been right. The detention cameras operated through the police network, but the black dome belonged to the building's original security system, installed years before the current network. Different server, different storage, different access credentials. Holloway had disabled the police cameras. He had not disabled that one. Reyes stared at the monitor. The archived feed showed Mercer leading Danielle into detention. It showed Holloway standing outside her cell. It showed the fabricated statement passing through the bars. Reyes quietly closed the system window. She did not delete anything. Back in detention, Marcus finally spoke again. The copy is with someone I trust. Danielle looked at him. Can they access it without you? Yes. Good. Marcus studied her. You keep saying things like you know how this works. Danielle met his eyes. I know enough to tell you not to give Holloway the location. Who are you? Danielle paused. Someone who wants that evidence preserved. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you tonight. Marcus shook his head. Then Reyes returned. Bell, I need to confirm emergency contact information. Marcus looked confused. I already gave it. I need to confirm it again. Reyes held her clipboard against the bars. Danielle immediately understood. Marcus did too. He gave Reyes a name, then an address. Finally, he quietly added, tell her to check the blue folder. Reyes wrote nothing, but she remembered every word. At the booking desk, Holloway was examining Danielle's property again. Wallet, case, notebook, phone. Then he found a second device hidden inside a narrow compartment of Danielle's bag. It looked like an ordinary compact phone, but it had no visible personal notifications. Holloway turned it on. A passcode screen appeared. Mercer looked over his shoulder. What is that? Maybe our answer. Holloway searched the device for emergency information. Only one number appeared. No name, no label. Mercer immediately shook his head. Don't call it. Holloway looked at him. Why? Because we don't know who answers. That's exactly why I'm calling. Mercer stepped closer. Captain, think. Holloway had already pressed the number. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Nearly 20 miles away, inside a secure operations room, a device began vibrating across a conference table. A woman named Special Agent Naomi Brooks looked down. Danielle Carter's emergency operational line was calling. Naomi's expression changed instantly. Danielle had missed her scheduled check-in 43 minutes earlier. Now, her protected device was making an unsolicited call. She answered. This is Brooks. At Central Precinct, Holloway remained silent. Naomi waited. Danielle? Holloway ended the call. Mercer stared at him. She said Danielle. Holloway looked at the phone in his hand. For the first time, his face lost all color. 20 miles away, Naomi was already moving. Trace that call. Another agent turned toward his computer. On it. Naomi picked up her jacket. Carter missed check-in. Somebody just accessed her emergency line. The room changed immediately. Chairs moved. Computers awakened. Agents reached for equipment. Back at Central Precinct, Holloway removed the battery from the device. We never found this. Mercer stared at him. What? You heard me. Captain, whoever answered knows her. Holloway placed the phone inside a drawer. Then we finish the reports before they know where she is. In the detention corridor, Danielle heard hurried footsteps beyond the door. She looked toward Marcus. Something had changed. She could feel it. What Holloway did not know was that the call he had just tried to erase had accomplished exactly what Danielle needed. Her team now knew she was missing, and they had just begun looking for her. Captain Grant Holloway stood over the booking desk, staring at the dark emergency phone he had just placed inside the drawer. Whoever answered knows her, Mercer said again. I heard you. We need to release her. Holloway turned sharply. And give her everything? What everything? The detention, the search, Bell, the cameras. Mercer's face tightened. Holloway lowered his voice. If Carter walks out now, she controls the story. If the paperwork is complete first, we control it. Mercer stared at him. For the first time that night, even he looked frightened by Holloway's logic. What do you want me to do? Rewrite your report. Holloway pushed a keyboard toward him. The stop began at 7:41. You observed suspicious behavior. Bell consented to the search. Evidence was recovered at 7:44. Mercer hesitated. That isn't what happened. Holloway leaned closer. It's what your report says happened. Mercer slowly sat down. In detention, Danielle watched the security door. She had spent years interviewing suspects, witnesses, informants, and officers. She knew what panic looked like inside an organization. People moved faster. Doors closed harder. Voices became quieter. The precinct was panicking. Marcus stood across the corridor. You think they're going to let us out? Eventually. That didn't sound convincing. Danielle looked at him. Marcus, whatever happens next, don't change your statement. They already threatened me. They'll probably do it again. You say that like you expected this. Danielle paused. I expected pressure. Before Marcus could respond, the door opened. Holloway entered with Mercer and Reyes. Bell, stand up. Marcus remained seated. I asked for an attorney, and your request is being processed. Then I'm not answering anything. Holloway smiled coldly. This isn't an interview. He looked at Reyes. Bring the form. Reyes held a document but did not move. Holloway's voice hardened. Officer Reyes. She stepped forward. Holloway slid the paper through Marcus's cell. It was a revised statement. Marcus read the first paragraph and looked up. This says I consented to the search. You did. No, I didn't. It also says you didn't see Officer Mercer leave the vehicle. Marcus laughed bitterly. So now you're writing my memory too? Mercer stepped toward the bars. Sign it. Marcus tore his gaze from the paper. No. Holloway turned to Reyes. Document refusal. Reyes looked at the statement. Captain, this version doesn't match the initial report. Nobody spoke. Holloway stared at her. Excuse me? The original incident entry says the evidence was recovered later. I corrected the timeline. Based on what? Holloway stepped toward her. Are you investigating me now? I'm asking because you want my signature. Holloway pointed at the bottom of the form. Sign. Reyes did not reach for the pen. I can't certify something I didn't witness. Mercer muttered. Emily, don't do this. Reyes looked at him. Do what? Make this worse. Danielle moved closer to her bars. Holloway noticed. His anger shifted toward her. This is because of you. Danielle remained calm. No, Captain. This is because she read the document. Holloway walked toward Danielle's cell. You think you're clever? I think Officer Reyes understands what her signature means. Holloway turned back to Reyes. You want to keep wearing that uniform? Reyes stiffened. That sounds like a threat. It's career advice. He stepped closer. You've got 4 years here. Pension track. Promotion eligibility. You really want to throw that away over 2 people sitting in cells? Reyes glanced at Danielle. Then Marcus. Neither looked powerful. Neither appeared capable of protecting her career. That was exactly why her decision mattered. Reyes placed the pen on the clipboard. I'm not signing it. Holloway's face hardened. Get out. Reyes turned. And leave your body camera. She stopped. My body camera? You heard me. It's department equipment assigned to me. Then I'm ordering you to dock it. Reyes looked at Danielle for one brief second. Then she removed the camera. She placed it on the booking counter outside the detention corridor. What Holloway did not see was Reyes quietly remove her personal phone from her pocket as she walked away. Minutes later, inside the locker room, she typed one message to the emergency contact Marcus had provided. Check the blue folder. Do not contact Central Precinct. Then she sent a second message to a former academy instructor she trusted. I think evidence is being altered. Preserve this message. She put the phone away. Back in detention, Holloway unlocked Danielle's cell. You're being transferred. Danielle remained seated. To where? County holding. What charge? Interference and obstruction. County intake will require the arrest documentation. It'll be ready. Danielle stood. So that's the plan. What plan? Move me before someone comes looking. Mercer looked away. Holloway smiled. Nobody is looking for you. Danielle studied him. He was lying. And now she knew it. The emergency phone had changed his behavior too dramatically. You called someone. Holloway's expression flickered. Danielle continued. You found something in my property. You called a number, and whoever answered frightened you. Mercer stared at Holloway. Holloway stepped forward. You don't know what you're talking about. You were trying to identify me. Now you're trying to move me. Danielle lowered her voice. You still have time to stop. Holloway laughed. There was no humor in it. You think this is negotiation? No. Danielle stepped toward him until only the bars separated them. It's your last warning. Holloway stared at her. Then he slammed the cell door shut again. Transfer vehicle in 20 minutes. Outside, nearly 20 miles away, Naomi Brooks stood behind an agent examining a digital map. We have the call. A point appeared. Belhaven Central Precinct. Naomi's eyes hardened. Confirm Carter's last known location. Another agent answered immediately. Mercer Avenue, 6 blocks from Central. Naomi grabbed her coat. How many units? 4 vehicles ready. Make it 5. Within minutes, 5 dark SUVs pulled away from the secure operations building and entered the rain. Back at Central Precinct, Holloway returned to Danielle's cell. He stood outside the bars with his arms folded. You've got 20 minutes before you disappear into county processing. Danielle said nothing. Holloway smiled. Still waiting for somebody? Marcus watched from the neighboring cell. Holloway leaned closer. Nobody is coming for you. Danielle looked beyond him toward the dark hallway. Then she met his eyes. Her voice was almost quiet enough to be mistaken for sympathy. You're wrong. Several blocks away, 5 dark SUVs turned onto Central Avenue. And they were coming straight for the precinct. The first SUV stopped outside Central Precinct at 11:08 p.m. 4 more arrived behind it. Rain hammered the pavement as doors opened almost simultaneously. Naomi Brooks stepped from the lead vehicle, followed by a team of federal agents in plain clothes. No sirens, no dramatic announcement. They did not need one. They moved with purpose. Inside, the desk officer saw them approaching and stood. Captain? Holloway emerged from the detention corridor. What? We've got people coming in. Who? Before the officer could answer, the front doors opened. Naomi entered first. She displayed her credentials. I need to speak with whoever is commanding this shift. Holloway approached. That's me. Captain Grant Holloway? Yes. Naomi studied him. We're looking for Danielle Carter. For half a second, Holloway said nothing. Mercer, standing several feet behind him, went pale. Holloway recovered. We have a Danielle Carter in custody. Naomi's expression did not change. Take me to her. You'll need to explain your interest. No, you need to explain her detention. Holloway folded his arms. She interfered with an active narcotics arrest. She refused lawful instructions and attempted to conceal potential evidence. Naomi looked toward another agent. Arrest record. Holloway hesitated. It's being finalized. You've held her for hours and the arrest record isn't finalized? It's an ongoing investigation. Naomi's eyes hardened. Show me what you have. Holloway motioned toward the booking desk. Mercer remained silent as Naomi examined the electronic report. She read the timeline once. Then again. This says Carter was detained at 7:51. Holloway nodded. Another agent placed a tablet beside the monitor. Traffic camera footage shows the patrol cruiser leaving Mercer Avenue with her at 8:02. Naomi continued reading. And this report says the alleged interference happened at 7:58. Nobody spoke. She looked at Holloway. So according to your own report, she committed the act that justified her detention after she was already detained. Holloway glanced toward Mercer. Clerical error. Mercer said nothing. Naomi closed the report. I want access to your video records. The system malfunctioned tonight. Every camera? Several. How convenient. Holloway stepped closer. I don't appreciate the implication. Naomi met his stare. I haven't made one yet. A voice came from behind them. I have footage. Everyone turned. Emily Reyes stood near the hallway. Holloway's face changed. Officer Reyes, go back to your assignment. She did not move. Naomi looked at her. What footage? My body camera recorded part of the detention. Holloway interrupted. That recording is department property. Reyes looked at him. It's also evidence. The room became silent. Mercer whispered, Emily. Reyes ignored him. My camera was running when Carter was brought in. It recorded the booking area, parts of Captain Holloway's instructions, and the change from investigative detention to obstruction. Holloway stepped toward her. You were ordered to dock that camera. I did. Then stop talking. Naomi moved between them. Captain, you will not instruct a witness regarding potential evidence while we are standing here. Holloway froze. Witness. The word changed everything. Naomi turned to Reyes. Was any other recording system operating? Reyes hesitated, then nodded. The old building security system. Holloway stared at her. What old system? The detention corridor has an independent camera. It isn't connected to the network you ordered shut down. Mercer closed his eyes. Holloway's face drained. Naomi looked toward her team. Preserve it now. 2 agents moved immediately. Holloway raised his voice. Nobody touches department systems without authorization. Naomi turned. Then preserve them yourself while we obtain what we need. For the first time, Holloway seemed to realize he was no longer controlling the room. Then a second agent approached Naomi. We confirmed Bell. Holloway looked toward him. What about Bell? The agent glanced at Naomi before answering. Marcus Bell matches the missing witness in the Mercer Avenue evidence investigation. Mercer stepped backward. Holloway's eyes widened. Naomi continued calmly. We've been trying to locate him for 3 weeks. The color disappeared from Mercer's face. Holloway looked toward detention. First Danielle. Now Marcus. 2 people he had tried to silence were not random detainees. They were connected to something much larger. Naomi began walking toward the secured corridor. Holloway blocked her path. You're not entering my detention area. Move. I have 2 suspects back there. Naomi stared at him. You have a protected witness and Danielle Carter. She's under arrest. Open the door. Not until you tell me what authority you think you have. Naomi's expression became almost cold. More than you realize. Holloway did not move. Naomi nodded toward the desk officer. Open it. The officer looked at Holloway. Then at the federal credentials, his hand moved toward the release control. Buds. The security door unlocked. Naomi entered with 3 agents. Mercer followed at a distance. Holloway hurried after them. They reached Marcus first. One agent immediately recognized him. Mr. Bell? Marcus stood. Yes. You're safe. Don't answer any more questions. Holloway's mouth opened. Naomi continued walking. Then she reached the next cell. Danielle stood behind the bars. Her jacket was gone. Her shoelaces were gone. Her belongings had been confiscated. Yet her posture remained perfectly composed. Naomi stopped. For the first time that night, Relief crossed her face. Supervisory Special Agent Carter. Holloway froze. Mercer stared at Danielle. Marcus slowly stepped toward his bars. Danielle said nothing. Naomi turned toward Holloway. Open this cell. Holloway's lips parted. Special Agent? Nobody answered immediately. His eyes moved from Naomi's credentials to Danielle, then back again. The woman he had mocked, searched, threatened, and classified as a suspect was standing silently behind his bars while an entire federal team waited for her release. And Holloway was only seconds away from learning the one detail that would destroy every assumption he had made that night. Danielle Carter had not wandered into his investigation. He had wandered into hers. For several seconds, Captain Grant Holloway did not move. Open the cell, Naomi Brooks repeated. Holloway looked at Danielle Carter as though seeing her for the first time. Your FBI? Danielle held his star. Naomi answered for her. That woman is Supervisory Special Agent Danielle Carter. She commands the federal task force investigating misconduct connected to this precinct. Silence swallowed the corridor. Mercer's face went white. Marcus Bell gripped the bars of his neighboring cell. Holloway slowly shook his head. No, she was interfering with an arrest. Danielle finally spoke. I was observing one. You never identified yourself. I wasn't required to. Holloway pointed toward her. She concealed her identity. Danielle's expression remained calm. You arrested a civilian you believed had no authority. That is precisely why what happened tonight matters. Naomi stepped toward the lock. Open it. Holloway's hand trembled slightly as he entered the release code. Buds. The steel door opened. Danielle stepped out. An agent approached, carrying the belongings recovered from booking. Her wallet, her notebook, her phone, and finally, the credentials Holloway's officers had failed to discover. Danielle opened the leather holder. The federal seal and identification inside erased the last possibility that Holloway could explain this away. Mercer stared at it. Oh, God. Danielle closed the credentials. She did not smile. She did not insult them. She simply became the person she had been all along. Naomi, secure the building security archive. Already happening. Preserve every report created or modified tonight. Audit the edit history. Nobody deletes anything. Naomi nodded. Danielle looked toward Marcus. Get Mr. Bell out of that cell. Separate him from everyone involved in his arrest and arrange counsel. Holloway stepped forward. You can't just take control of my station. Danielle turned toward him. I'm preserving evidence connected to an active federal investigation. Investigation into what? Danielle paused. You. The word landed harder than shouting could have. Holloway's face tightened. How long? 4 months. Mercer looked at him. Danielle continued. Altered evidence logs, contradictory search reports, complaints disappearing after reaching supervisory review, arrests involving the same small group of officers. Her eyes moved toward Mercer, and witnesses who suddenly became suspects after speaking up. Marcus stepped from his cell as another agent opened it. I told you what I saw, he said to Holloway. Holloway ignored him. Then Reyes entered carrying her docked body camera. I want this preserved. Danielle accepted it carefully. Was it recording when Captain Holloway changed my detention status? Yes. When he ordered cameras disabled? Yes. When he asked you to certify the revised paperwork? Reyes swallowed. Yes. Holloway turned on her. You have no idea what you've done. Reyes looked directly at him. I told the truth. Naomi approached Danielle. We have the independent security footage. Condition? Intact. And the report audit? Running. Another agent appeared with a laptop. We found 3 versions of Carter's booking record. He turned the screen. First version, investigative detention. Second, obstruction. Third, adds attempted concealment of evidence. When were they created? The third was entered after Captain Holloway searched Carter's restricted record. Mercer stepped away from Holloway. That was his order. Holloway spun around. Shut your mouth. Mercer's fear became desperation. You told me to change the timeline? Mercer. You told me to make 749 into 744. Every person in the corridor heard it. Holloway stared at him. Danielle said nothing for several seconds. She did not need to. The structure Holloway had spent years protecting was collapsing because the people inside it had begun protecting themselves. Marcus spoke next. There's more. Danielle turned. The blue folder? Marcus nodded. My sister has it. What's inside? A copy of the video from 3 months ago. Mercer returning to the cruiser before the evidence suddenly appeared. Mercer lowered his head. Holloway looked toward the exit. 2 federal agents quietly repositioned themselves. Danielle noticed. Captain, don't. I'm not doing anything. Good. Naomi's phone vibrated. She read the message. then looked at Danielle. "We received confirmation. Marcus's contact preserved the file." Danielle nodded. "Added to the evidence request." Holloway suddenly pointed at Mercer. "He did the searches. He handled the evidence. If he planted anything, that was him." Mercer stared at his captain in disbelief. "You approved every report." "I trusted my officers." "You told me which complaints to bury." "Enough," Danielle said. Both men stopped. Her voice had not risen. It did not need to. "This is not a negotiation over who carries the most blame. Evidence will establish what each person did." Holloway looked at her. "You think tonight proves everything?" "No." Danielle stepped closer. "Tonight proves tonight." She gestured toward the cameras, reports, and body camera. "The rest will be proven separately." Naomi handed Danielle a document. Danielle read it, then looked toward Holloway. "Captain Grant Holloway, effective immediately, you are being removed from access to evidence systems and investigative records pending execution of the preservation orders and further investigation." Holloway stared at her. "You're destroying my career." Danielle shook her head. "No. Your decisions are being documented." Mercer was escorted toward a separate interview room. Holloway watched him go. Only hours earlier, Danielle had stood in that same corridor without her phone, her jacket, or even her shoelaces, while Holloway told her that he decided who received respect. Now she could have humiliated him. She chose something else. "Procedure." "Captain," Danielle said, "you have the right to consult counsel before answering investigative questions. You will not be pressured into signing a statement. You will not be threatened for requesting representation." Holloway looked at her, stunned. Danielle continued, "You will receive every protection you were obligated to give everyone else." For the first time, Holloway had no answer. Danielle turned toward Reyes. "You didn't know who I was when you refused to falsify that report." "No, Mo." "That matters." Reyes's eyes filled slightly, but she remained composed. Danielle looked around the detention corridor one last time. Her cell door remained open. The fabricated statement was preserved. The cameras were being secured. Marcus Bell was free, but Danielle understood something important. Her badge had not made Holloway's actions wrong. They had been wrong before anyone knew she had one. And exposing that truth was only the beginning of the justice Bellhaven had been waiting for. 4 months later, morning sunlight poured through the windows of Bellhaven Central Precinct. The building looked almost the same, but the system inside it did not. The investigation that began long before Danielle Carter was locked inside a cell had expanded after that night. Federal investigators reviewed years of arrest reports, evidence logs, body camera records, internal complaints, and supervisory approvals. What they discovered was not one mistake. It was a pattern. Multiple cases involving Kyle Mercer contained unexplained gaps between searches and evidence discoveries. Complaints against officers had been closed without proper review. Reports had been modified after supervisors approved them, and Grant Holloway's authorization appeared again and again. The independent security footage from the night Danielle was detained became especially important. It showed Holloway delivering the fabricated statement. Emily Reyes's body camera captured his order to change documentation and disable cameras. Computer records preserved the exact moments Danielle's booking status was altered. Marcus Bell's video provided another critical piece. It showed Mercer returning to his cruiser during the earlier incident before suddenly discovering evidence during a second search. No single recording told the entire story. Together, they did. Holloway was removed from command and faced charges connected to evidence, manipulation, obstruction, and falsification of official records. Mercer faced separate charges based on his own conduct. Other officers were investigated individually. Danielle insisted on that distinction. She refused to treat an entire department as guilty because several people had abused their authority. Justice, she believed, demanded evidence in both directions. Several officers were cleared. Others were disciplined, and cases involving questionable evidence were reopened for independent review. For Marcus Bell, the changes were more personal. The charges from the night Danielle met him were dismissed after investigators reconstructed the search, but his greatest relief came weeks later. The young man Marcus had seen arrested 3 months earlier received a new review of his case. The evidence against him could no longer be trusted. He was released pending further proceedings. Marcus called Danielle afterward. "I kept thinking nobody would believe me," he said. Danielle stood beside her office window. "You kept the evidence. I was scared." "Courage doesn't mean you weren't scared." Marcus became quiet. Then he asked, "Did you know Holloway would arrest you?" "No." "Then why didn't you show him your badge?" Danielle looked down at the city below. "Because by the time I could have ended it that way, I needed to understand what happened to people who didn't have one." Marcus said nothing. He understood. Emily Reyes understood too. She returned to duty after investigators confirmed she had preserved evidence and refused to certify false information. One afternoon, Danielle met her outside Central Precinct. Reyes seemed uncomfortable when Danielle approached. "Agent Carter." "Emily." Reyes smiled slightly. "I still feel strange calling you that." "Why?" "Because the first time I met you, you were in handcuffs." "Danielle Smil." That was a complicated introduction. They walked toward the entrance. Reyes became serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "When Holloway found out your records were restricted, you knew he was getting suspicious." "Yes. You could have told us who you were." "I could have." "Why didn't you?" Danielle stopped. Officers and civilians moved through the lobby beyond the glass doors. "Suppose I had shown him my credentials immediately," Danielle said. "What do you think would have happened?" Reyes considered it. "He probably would have released you." "Exactly." Danielle looked through the doors. "And then what would we have learned?" Reyes slowly understood that he treats federal agents carefully. Danielle nodded, but that wasn't the question. "What was? How does he treat someone when he believes she has no power?" Reyes looked down. Danielle continued. "My rights didn't begin when your captain learned I was FBI." Her voice softened. "Neither did Marcus's." Reyes looked toward the detention hallway. "I keep thinking about that night." "So do I." "Were you afraid?" Danielle considered lying. Instead, she told the truth. "Yes." Reyes seemed surprised. Danielle smiled faintly. "Training doesn't remove fear. It teaches you what to do while fear is present." They continued walking. Central Precinct now operated under new evidence-handling procedures. Report revisions required documented explanations. Independent audits reviewed complaints involving searches. Camera shutdowns required technical justification and supervisory records. None of those changes guaranteed perfection. Danielle knew policies could never replace character, but accountability made abuse harder to hide. Before leaving, she walked alone toward the detention corridor. The same fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The same steel doors lined the wall. Then she reached the cell where Holloway had locked her. It was empty. Danielle stood outside it. She remembered his voice. "Nobody is coming for you." That sentence had stayed with her longer than the handcuffs. Because Holloway had been wrong about Danielle. 5 SUVs had eventually arrived. Federal agents had walked through those doors. Her credentials had transformed the room. But Danielle knew something uncomfortable. For many people who had sat on that bench before her, nobody had come. No federal team. No dramatic reveal. No badge hidden inside a wallet. Just ordinary people hoping somebody would believe them. Danielle placed her hand against the cold steel bars. That was why the investigation mattered. Her victory had never been the moment Holloway discovered who she was. It was not watching Mercer panic. It was not seeing federal agents enter the precinct. The real victory was ensuring that the next person standing behind those bars would not need an important title to deserve lawful treatment. Danielle turned away from the cell. Near the lobby, Reyes was speaking with a nervous young man who had arrived to file a complaint. Instead of dismissing him, she pulled out a chair. She listened. She documented his words. Danielle watched for a moment. Then she quietly walked toward the exit. Outside, Bellhaven moved beneath a clear afternoon sky. Cars passed. People hurried along sidewalks. Nobody stopped when Danielle emerged from the precinct. Nobody knew what she had endured there. She preferred it that way. Her badge remained inside her jacket, hidden, because dignity should never require someone to display power before receiving respect. And justice meant making sure the law protected the person nobody recognized just as fiercely as it protected the person everyone did. Sometimes the strongest measure of character is how we treat people when we believe they have nothing to offer us. Danielle's story reminds us that dignity belongs to everyone before titles, uniforms, or status enter the room. If this story moved you, share what justice means to you in the comments, and subscribe for more stories where truth finds its voice.